città delle 100 chiese, Lucca città del commercio, delle banche, ma Lucca città delle missioni, città dei missionari. In particolare ricordiamo il beato Angelo Orsucci, nato a Lucca nel 1573, lascia la sua città per raggiungere terre lontane. Nel 1618 arriva come missionario nel Sollevante. Ripercorriamo adesso insieme le tracce emblematiche della sua presenza all'interno della nostra città.
Su Angelo Orsucci l'Archivio Storico Diocesano di Lucca conserva numerosa documentazione, in particolare l'atto di battesimo del 9 maggio 1573 che avvenne nel battistero della cattedrale di San Martino di Lucca. Nel 1680 fu aperta la causa di beatificazione. Noi conserviamo anche altra documentazione all'interno della causa, soprattutto le inquisizioni che furono fatte ai testimoni. Molto interessante è anche l'autentica di una lettera di Angelo Orsucci mentre si trovava prigioniero. Si tratta di una lettera molto importante perché conserva l'unica testimonianza del testo in spagnolo della lettera inviata nel 1621 dal Giappone.
Dopo anni di duro carcere, Angelo Orsucci, il 10 settembre 1622, viene condannato alle fiamme insieme ai suoi compagni. Ma la sua morte non ha spento la memoria della sua opera missionaria. Infatti ne ha un tangibile ricordo il prezioso reliquiario custodito qui nella cattedrale di Lucca, che è stato realizzato dalla bottega Favilla in occasione della sua beatificazione. Il reliquiario presenta un angelo tunicato che regge la teca contenente una delle ultime lettere inviate da Orsucci ai suoi cari prima di accogliere la palma del martirio.
I documenti qui esposti testimoniano in particolare il coinvolgimento diretto delle massime istituzioni dell'antica Repubblica di Lucca, tra cui diverse deliberazioni del Consiglio Generale, come quella qui esposta del 1645, e molte lettere degli anziani volte a ottenere l'intervento di altri stati cattolici, come questa lettera alla Regina di Spagna del 28 novembre 1671. Possiede inoltre la raccolta di scritture di Giovanni Battista Orsucci e a tale raccolta appartiene il pezzo qui esposto, Vita e memorie del beato frate Angelo Orsucci, domenicano, uno dei martiri nel Giappone, contenente, fra gli altri documenti, la copia di 18 lettere scritte da Angelo Orsucci nel periodo 1599-1622.
Siamo qui nella chiesa di San Romano, dove nel maggio del 2023 un evento straordinario ha visto per la prima volta insieme la città di Lucca, l'arcidiocesi di Nagasaki e l'arcidiocesi di Lucca. Una targa ricorda i 400 anni dalla sua nascita.
Alla metà del Cinquecento, con San Francesco Saverio, inizia l'evangelizzazione del Giappone, un processo che finirà tragicamente con una delle più grandi persecuzioni della storia moderna. Ricordare questa figura, ricordare questo processo è importante perché non solo stabilisce dei legami di amicizia tra la nostra città, la città di Nagasaki, tra l'Italia e il Giappone, ma ci ricorda che l'evangelizzazione è il motivo per cui la Chiesa esisteva allora ed esiste anche oggi. Abbiamo bisogno di queste figure, di queste memorie, perché il passato ci aiuti a vivere il presente e ad essere all'altezza della testimonianza di chi ci ha preceduto nei secoli passati.
Angelo Orsucci rappresenta un ponte spirituale e culturale tra Lucca e il Giappone, un simbolo di incontro fra mondi lontani uniti da ideali universali come la pace, la dignità umana ed il rispetto per le differenze. Da Lucca voglio dunque lanciare un messaggio di speranza affinché la cultura possa essere promotrice di progetti di umanizzazione, capaci di rimettere al centro la vita delle nostre comunità e la bellezza del nostro patrimonio culturale, che da secoli unisce Lucca al Sol Levante.
Konnichiwa. Kyo Gono Simposium Nitte Paolo Giulietti Daisikyo to watashi ga minasama o omukate dekiru koto o taihen koe hin no omoimasu. Soshite minasama no go kyuyo ni kokoro yori kansha mo siagemasu. Soredawa korejori simposium o kaishi itashimasu. Minasama ni totte juiriji na gikan ni narimasu yo negatte orimasu. Arigatou gozaimashita. Kono atta wa Italia go to eigo de shinko itashimasu. Dozo yoroshiku onegai itashimasu. Analizzando attentamente il tema principale proposto dall'Expo 2025 Osaka, progettare la società futura per le nostre vite, del padiglione Italia, l'arte rigenera la vita, e dal padiglione Santa Sede, la bellezza porta speranza, il progetto Thesaurum Fidei in Giappone intende donare e trasferire un messaggio di speranza affinché la cultura possa essere promotrice di progetti di umanizzazione capaci di rimettere al centro la vita delle nostre comunità e la bellezza del nostro patrimonio culturale che da secoli unisce l'Occidente all'Oriente. Il programma Thesaurum Fidei in Giappone ha avuto inizio il 1° agosto 2025 con l'apertura della mostra Amakusa, una straordinaria storia della Isola Gloriosa, parte integrante degli eventi promossi con il padiglione della Santa Sede presso Padiglione Italia a Expo 2025. Oggi, 3 settembre 2025, siamo qui tutti riuniti presso l'auditorium del Padiglione per aprire insieme le porte del Simposio Internazionale Fides et Spes, errando per le strade ondose, Pilgrims Between Japan and Europe, che si propone di avvicinare la comunità internazionale ai temi dell'incontro culturale tra Giappone ed Europa dal XVI secolo ad oggi. In particolare l'attività dei missionari e dei cristiani nascosti in Giappone continua a essere linfa vitale per la vita della Chiesa e grazie alla loro fede e al coraggio di errare per strade ondose in ogni luogo sono ancora oggi guida insostituibile e fondamentale per instaurare dialoghi pacifici. Colgo l'occasione a nome della nostra Arcidiocesi di Lucca di ringraziare l'ambasciatore Mario Andrea Vattani, commissario generale di Expo 2025, che invito tra un po' qui per un saluto, il dottor Stefano Riccardi del Dicastero dell'Evangelizzazione, il cardinale Hollerich, arcivescovo del Lussemburgo, il cardinale Maeda, arcivescovo di Osaka, il cardinale Kikuchi, arcivescovo di Tokyo, l'arcivescovo Paolo Giulietti, arcivescovo di Lucca, Monsignor Rino Fisichella, proprefetto del Dicastero per l'Evangelizzazione, e Monsignor Andrea Lembo del Pime per tutta la collaborazione ricevuta. Noi ringraziamo tutti i vescovi della Conferenza Episcopale Giapponese e in particolare tutti i relatori giunti qui da tante parti del mondo per unirsi a noi in questo giorno davvero importante per la Chiesa Cattolica in Giappone e nel mondo. Grazie a tutti per la vostra presenza. Invito adesso l'ambasciatore Vattani per un saluto. Grazie.
Grazie alla professoressa Olimpia Niglio per l'organizzazione di questo simposio. Già, minasan, ohayo gozaimasu. Italia Kae Yokoso. Benvenuti al Padiglione Italia. 今どの言葉使ったらいいかなと思ってるけど、多分英語で通訳残念ながらないのでじゃあ英語で。So welcome, eminences, excellencies. We are very happy to host this symposium here at the Italian pavilion, who also, as it was recorded, also shares the presence of the Holy See for the first time in history. So I'd like to commend really His Excellency Rino Fisichella and our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Tajani, who signed this agreement, this very special agreement, which helps us host here for the first time in history at an expo at the Holy See with the beautiful masterpiece of Caravaggio, which I think that you all have seen. I'm very happy to have here today with us Cardinal Maeda and Cardinal Kikuchi, which I meet for the first time. I heard a lot about you, Cardinal. And I have to say that since before the beginning of Expo, we have had a number of collaborations with Cardinal Maeda and with the dioceses, of course, of Osaka. This is natural for us because one of the reasons that pushes, which I would say that explains the presence of Italy at Expo Osaka in this way, I mean, with this kind of visitor experience, and with the presence of our friend, I would say, Ito Mancho, because he is with us every day. He's the first person we meet when we enter the pavilion, is to talk about relations between Italy and Japan. And the protagonists of the historical relations between Italy and Japan are, of course, well, the first one we meet is Ito Mancho. So today's, I really look forward to participating today to this symposium, to hearing a lot from you. I welcome Cardinal Hollerich. Very nice to meet you here, and I really look forward to this symposium. I want to give you a small surprise about what we will be doing next week, I think from the 7th of September. 実は来週から9月7日から特別なコラボレーションが始めます。そのコラボレーションはこのイタリア館と、Future of Life というとても有名な、万博の、石黒さんが、作った、パビリオンです。ロボティクスですね。そのロボティクスのパビリオンの中にいろんなエティカルな話も出ますね。で、私たちもフィジケッラさんとこのプランを作った時、できるだけこのホーリーシーが、バチカンがいることは物を見せたりのためだけではなくて、カラバッジョがあることだけではなくて、その6ヶ月の中にいろんなアクティビティ一緒にやって、いろんなバリューズとエティカルの話もできればいいですねというプラン作りました。で、その来週から特別に Future of 石黒さんの先生のパビリオンからロボットが1週間本物のそのアンドロイド、彼が作った、彼がインベントしたロボットはこのパビリオンに見せます。で、そのロボットは誰ですか？イトマンチョです。ですから入る時 私はね、今までその準備のビデオしか見てないけど、見たとき本当にびっくりしました。生きてるみたいな、みたいな、そういう洋服を着て、若者の糸満潮が出てきたみたいな気持ちだから、ぜひまた来てください、その時。だから、it's a happy coincidence that we're having this symposium just before the moment when we will. But this is not just a game. It's not just a game. Because the idea of robotics, of the soul, of conscience, of humanity, of the future of life, and the future society are themes that it's good to discuss here in this kind of context. So I think that it's going to be an interesting time, and I look forward to today, but also of hearing your ideas in this last few months of Expo. So よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございます。
So much. And now I invite Dr. Stefano Riccardi, and the director of the Holy See Pavilion. Thank you so much.
Ohayou gozaimasu. Arigatou gozaimasu. Oyokoso, Italia to Vatican Pavilion. Now I talk in English because I don't talk Japanese like your embassy. On behalf of the General Commissioner, His Excellency Rino Fisichella, welcome to this amazing symposium organized by Olimpianillo and His Excellency Paolo Giulietti. We are very thankful to them because this event was born many years ago. And we talk and we work a lot for this day, and we are here thanks to all the Episcopal Conference that is here with us in this special occasion, thanks to His Eminence Kikuchi and His Eminence Maeda and Your Eminence Ollerich. Arigatou gozaimasu. And this kind of event is for us very important because it's the soul of this pavilion, because we have an amazing masterpiece, but of Caravaggio, as you will see very soon this morning. But you know, the Vatican and the Church is not only art, is also soul, is also spirituality, and for us it's very important to host this kind of event. So thank you so much for coming here, and enjoy. Thank you. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Just one moment to take the floor again, because in the confusion of my papers, I forgot to thank His Excellency Monsignor Paolo Giulietti, who welcomed us in Lucca, very kind, in the beautiful city of Lucca. You have seen how beautiful the city of Lucca is. Toscana was one of the 18 regions who presented themselves here in the pavilion, and Lucca was a great protagonist of that time. So thank you so much for this event, and we look forward also to collaborating in the future, because this is just the beginning. Expo is only a beginning. I mean, these are investments for the next years. So thank you so much. Grazie.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Battani. The project Thesaurum Fidei born in Japan in September 2022, and we hope to continue to collaborate with you in the next years, because Thesaurum Fidei continues. And now it is a very pleasure for us to introduce also Cardinal Hollerich, please, and please. Cardinal Hollerich, Archbishop of Luxembourg, and it is a very great honor for us, your presence here today, because also you introduced our book, international book about Tension Embassy, that published this year in May. Thank you so much, Cardinal Hollerich. Thank you.
So, thank you. I did not prepare anything, so I shall be very short. There is one point I would like to highlight, that the missionaries who came to Asia, and especially to Japan, became ambassadors of culture, not just of European culture to Japan, but also of Japanese culture to Europe. But there are missionaries and missionaries. There are missionaries with a wide horizon, and missionaries which were a little bit more narrow-minded. And among the missionaries, the Italian missionaries, they were educated in a culture of Renaissance, a culture of humanism, and they were prepared for such a cultural encounter. And it is thanks to them that we can still speak in Japan with pride of this time in history. So thank you so much, Professoressa. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for organizing this wonderful symposium. It will be a joy to listen to all the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we hope to enjoy all this event today, because it is important to share also these important topics also in the next future. Now I invite our Archbishop of Lucca, Monsignor Paolo Giulietti, also for welcome in Osaka. Thank you.
Good morning to you all. I would like to welcome and thank warmly all the dignitaries present at this conference, the most eminent cardinals and bishops, especially my friend and brother Peter from Nagasaki, the representatives of the Italian government and the Holy See, the distinguished professors and experts will present the results of their studies. Special thanks to Professor Olimpianillo, who coordinated the preparatory work. Today's conference aims to reflect on the evangelization of Japan and its relations with Europe during the tremendous and glorious era of the martyred missionaries and hidden Christians. They transmitted the treasure of faith with dedication and creativity, striving to bring together the millennia-old Japanese culture with the message of the gospel and the European culture that had drawn much inspiration from it. And the Tension Embassy was an extraordinary step of this meeting of cultures. They bore witness to the treasure of faith with the gift of their lives and their perseverance amid the persecution that erupted between the late 16th and the mid-17th centuries. Finally, they carefully preserved the treasure of faith, living it secretly but intensely for over 2.5 centuries. Understanding the history ever better is of a great value to us, not only as a reminder of something that must not be forgotten, but as a provocation for something that should always continue to happen in the life of the Church today. Faith, in fact, should always be a treasure for every one of us. It is still such a treasure for the Church today, for Christians today. How valuable are faith and belonging to Christ for us today in Italy and in Japan. Pope Leon told us, Italian Bishop, the last 17th of June, there is a need for renewed zeal in the proclamation and transmission of faith. In a time of great fragmentation, it is necessary to return to the foundation of our faith, to the kerygma. This is the first major commitment that motivates all the others. to bring Christ into the veins of humanity, renewing and sharing the apostolic mission. What we have seen and heard, we proclaim now to you. And it is a question discerning the ways in which the good news can be made to reach everyone, with pastoral actions capable of intercepting those who are most distant, and with tools suitable for the renewal of catechesis and the language of proclamation. The story of the evangelization of Japan presents many interesting elements in relation to this renewed apostolic mandate. The study program that the Diocese of Lucca began 3 years ago, highlighting the figure of the Dominican martyr Angelo Orsucci, today takes another step forward in a prestigious setting and with international speakers. Thank you again for your contribution to a true pilgrimage of hope, aimed at sharing with everyone what is most precious for us, the treasure of faith. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and we also thanks for your presence, Cardinal Maeda of the city of Osaka, also for 2 words, please.
それでは日本語でさっきいただいたプリントのですね、最後3行目ですね、特に日本における宣教師の活動と潜伏キリシタンの信仰は教会の命を支える源であり、彼らの信仰と波打つ道をさまよう勇気は平和的な対話を築くためのかけがえのない指針となっていますというこの文章が目に留まりまして、ルッカ大司教様からも話がありましたし、このビデオでも写真も出ましたけれども、このルッカ大司教区出身のアンジェロ・オルスッチという司祭ですかね、この殉教者が205副者、今はセバスチャン・木村と204殉教者となっておりますけれども、この一員であるというこのつながりからこのシンポジウムが行われるんだと合点しております。そういった意味からもちょうど今日ミサが玉造教会であったんですが、その時に使ったこの五七五ですね、福音句を披露して突然ですけれども私の挨拶に変えさせていただきます。それは、テサウルムフィデイ爽やかキリシタン、テサウルムフィデイ爽やかキリシタン、爽やかは今の季節ですね、今って秋の季節です。そのように爽やかなこのシンポジウムになりますように、爽やかな友好になりますようにという意味を込めて、テサウルムフィデイ爽やかキリシタンと呼んで私の挨拶に変えさせていただきます。ありがとうございました。Thank you so much.
ありがとうございます。I thanks also for the presence Cardinal Kikuchi from Tokyo, and also I invite Cardinal Kikuchi for 2 words to introduce in your things. Please, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning for everybody. On behalf of the Bishops' Conference of Japan, we are very happy to be invited today. Majority, I think all the bishops of Japan are here today to join you to listen to the lectures of the speakers. And then our church in Japan is really based on the historic events of the missionaries, early missionaries in 16th and 17th century. We really rely on we developed our faith based on these experiences of the missionaries and also the exchange between the Japan and the Italy and then the other European countries. So our church is really based on that experience, historical experiences. So it's very important today to listen to the lectures of these speakers and then to deepen the knowledge of the historical background of the missionary work in Japan. So thank you so much, and we hope that we're going to have a good day today. Thank you.
Thank you. And also I invite, I thank Andrea Lembo. I thank Andrea Lembo for all collaboration with us during this organization of these events. Thank you so much. And now we start finally with our symposium, and I invite Nuno Lima, parish here at the Cathedral of Osaka to introduce these events. Thank you so much.
Grazie. 皆さんこんにちは。10時半からの予定でしたので、そして英語で準備の挨拶しましたけど、顔を見たら、そして時間を考えたら、考えた文章を最初英語で読みますけれども、後で日本語でまとめようと思っています。うまくまとめられるかどうかちょっと分かりませんが、このように時間を調整したいと思います。Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, distinguished ambassadors, esteemed colleagues, dear friends, it's a great honor to address you today at the opening of the Symposium Thesaurum Fidei. Within the Holy See's presence at Expo, we embark together on a pilgrimage of encounter where beauty brings hope. This hope is already being joyfully received by the Japanese public and shared across the world. I can tell you that since the opening of the Expo, the Italian and Holy See pavilions has welcomed a remarkable number of visitors, standing among the most frequented and admired spaces. Certainly, guests come to admire the beauty of Caravaggio's Deposition of Christ, yet I am sure they also encounter a hope that speaks to human spirit across time and space. A world exposition as this Expo 2025 is, by its very nature, a meeting place. Here, ideas are exchanged, cultural treasures are shared, and visions for the future are openly discussed. The Holy See's presence at Expo 2025 is inspired by the same spirit, to be a witness of the values of human dignity, solidarity, and hope. Our symposium today seeks to reflect that same light, illuminating the long and rich story of faith, cultural exchange, and pilgrimage that has bound Japan and Europe together. So it was with the young envoys of the Tensho Embassy who once set forth on a remarkable pilgrimage across countries, bearing in their hearts the treasures of faith, the gift of beauty, and the spirit of encounter. To each of you who travel from near or from far to participate, I offer my sincere thanks. Your very presence today embodies the spirit of Thesaurum Fidei. You are the living witness that the treasures of faith continue to inspire and transform the present. I also extend my appreciation to the organizers of this symposium, especially the Archdiocese of Lucca, the Archbishop Paolo Giulietti, Professor Olimpia Niglio, whose dedication and scholarly guidance have shaped this program. My gratitude likewise goes to all institutions and individuals in Japan, Italy, and abroad who have worked together to make this encounter possible within the context of Expo 2025. At the beginning of this symposium, let us hold in our hearts a deep sense of gratitude for the privilege of this encounter. In Japanese, these words, deai and arigato, these words, gratitude and encounter, hold a meaning that usually goes unnoticed, yet quietly evokes a profound recognition of the interconnected moments of our lives. In this sense, may our words and exchange over this symposium together be a true encounter marked by a deep sense of gratitude and become a worthy continuation of long journey that has brought the peoples of Japan and Europe into conversation across centuries, a journey of mutual discovery, shared humanity, and the enduring hope of peace. 今回のテーマを考えると、天書嫌悪使節団、そして隠れキリシタン、またこのような巡礼を考えると、やはりこの出会いの道を歩まれた人々のことを思い出しました。日本のキリスト教の歴史がザビエルから始まったのですが、このような人々の出会いを通して深められたと思います。16世紀の頃、日本からヨーロッパへ行きました糸満書とその天主嫌悪使節団の4人、今このイタリアパビリオンの人々を迎え入れるのです。その意味で時間と空間を超える出会いの巡礼になるのではないかと思います。巡礼は今日のテーマの一つです。巡礼はどこかを目的にして自分のところから出て歩む道を一緒に歩まれたこの4人と私たちそれぞれのところから今日までここまで歩んだ道と重なって考えることができるのではないかと思います。また時代の流れを考えると、天書嫌悪使節団を書いたときに日本を大変な時代になりました。でもそれでも信仰は人々の希望につながったということを、私たちが考えることができるのではないでしょうか。それこそ隠れキリシタンが本当の意味で希望の巡礼者として2250年の大変な時代を過ごされたと思います。その意味で彼らの隠れたところでのお祈り、イエス様がおっしゃったように隠れたところでのお祈りが未来への信仰、そして未来への希望につながったのではないかと思います。糸満書たちを考えると、そして隠れキリシタンの人々を考えると、また私たちが今日この万博の果樹で一緒に集まってこのシンポジを行うことを考えると、いろんなつながりを見える気がします。シンボルだけでと言われるかもしれませんが、この万博の印としてであるオーリング、リングはこのような丸の形で人々をつながる意味でもあるのではないかと思います。糸満書たちがもしかしたらサンペテロ広場にいたときに、ベルリンのコロナ禍を見たときに、もしかしたら同じようにウェルカムされた、受け入れられたという気持ちであの場所に入られたのではないかと思います。私たちは今日この万博の箇所でこの一緒に 過去を考えて未来を、一緒に考えるときにこのような大変な時代の中でつながっているということを再確認して、またそれぞれの出会いを感謝し、未来への希望を持つことができるように、この私の願いであります。うまくまとめなかった気がしますが、このような最初のイントロダクションと挨拶とさせていただきます。ありがとうございます。
Now we start with our presentation, and I invite Professor Shinzo Kawamura, Sophia University Tokyo, Director of Sophia University Christian Bunko Library, with a presentation titled Evidence of the Strong Bond Between the Vatican and the Japanese Christian Church. Thank you so much for your presence here with us.
Good morning, everyone. Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Shinzo Kawamura. I am a Jesuit and professor of history at Sophia University in Tokyo. It is an honor to address you today on the enduring ties between the Vatican and Japan. My presentation is titled Golden Prayer, Faith Offered to the Pope Amid Persecution, a reflection on the quiet strength and shared beauty of devotion across centuries. With that, let us commence. Introduction. Please imagine this, a tiny seed planted in dry, cracked earth. In 1549, St. Francis Xavier did just that. He saw the first seed of Christianity in Japan, and against all odds, it began to grow. It grew strong. It grew full of hope. But then in 1614, a storm came. The Tokugawa shogunate unleashed a fierce persecution. The seed, it was faced, and this is the story of how it refused to die. Only 3 years later, in 1617, Pope Paul V declared Holy Year to honor St. Peter's Basilica. But he did more than celebrate. He turned his gaze eastward with compassion. To the Christians of Japan suffering under brutal oppression, the Pope sent a letter of comfort and a gift of spiritual strength. It wasn't a gesture, it was a lifetime. And the reply, it was extraordinary. Led by Jesuit Provincial Matthew Secoros, believers from 5 mission regions wrote back, not with fear, but with unshakable courage and with faith that would not break. The letter of gratitude. The letter known as the Hotosho, letters of gratitude, His Holiness Pope Paul V, are more than just words on paper. They are works of art. They radiate devotion. Today, the Barberini archives of the Vatican Apostolic Library preserve these precious letters. The letter of the gratitude, originally addressed to Pope Paul V, arrived in Rome after his passing during the reign of Urban VIII. Urban VIII, a Barberini Pope, received them and placed them in archives named after him. And even now, 4 centuries later, they speak, they echo across time. They remind us of a bond deep, enduring between the Vatican and Japan, and both bond written in faith and sealed in fortitude. the most beautiful letter in the world. These were not just any letters. They were created by ordinary believers, lay people, who had built extraordinary community under the guidance of Jesuit missionaries. In response to persecution, they composed 5 blessing letters of gratitude. Each one a visual masterpiece, each one a meter wide. Graceful Japanese script flows beside the elegant Latin translation. Though they came from 5 different provinces, Kyoto, Nagasaki, Arima, Chugoku, and Tohoku, the layout is strikingly unified. At the bottom of each letter, dozens of signatures, names of real people, anchoring the page with their face. The artistry is astonishing. Gold and silver leaf shimmered across surface. Hand-drawn illustration breathes life into the page. Luxurious material elevates each letter into sacred art. In the early 20th century, Vatican Library granted access to only a handful of Japanese scholars. What they found in the library's reading room was not just correspondence. It was a revelation, a testimony of resistance, beauty, and faith preserved on paper. Unearthing silent testimonies, a journey through paper, craft, and faith. Between 2020 and 2023, with general support from Kadokawa Cultural Promotion Foundation, I embarked on a journey to the Vatican Library, a journey to discover a forgotten fragment of Japanese history. Understanding the letter of gratitude was not a solitary undertaking. I was lucky to work with the paper investigation team at the University of Tokyo, a partnership that greatly deepened my research. Together, we studied letters using advanced tools like microscopes, LED lights, and high-resolution cameras. Even under scrutiny, these letters shone sacred and artistic, their lasting power undiminished. Let us pause to honor the material itself. Washi, traditional Japanese paper, arrived from China in 7th century. Over time, it was refined into something extraordinary. Gampi, Kozo, and Mitsumata stand out among all types of washi for their exceptional quality. Historical authorities designated these papers for use in imperial edicts and shogunate decrees. The letter of gratitude, they were made almost entirely of fine Gampi and Kozo papers. Radius of resistance. Among the letters I found, those from Kyoto and Osaka were especially impressive. Even after 400 years, they still gleam with golden luster. If they stayed in Japan, people would surely call them national treasures. But behind their beauty lies traces of suffering. In 1619, Shogun Tokugawa Hidetada ordered the execution of 52 Christians in Kyoto. Just 18 months later, amidst fear and persecution, believers created the letter of gratitude. Goldsmiths, painters, and calligraphers risked everything to create something eternal. Through shimmering gold and delicate brushwork, they embedded their faith, hope, and love. To them, the Pope's message was more than a letter. It was light in the darkness. It carried not just authority, but salvation. Upon examining the document closely, a previously unrecognized name came to light, Sugiyama Teishin Thomas. At first, there were no clues about the person's background. Later, the name appears in another important list of believers. This list was compiled by Matthias de Corus, 1617. His collection, Document Collected, contained letters from believers in 75 locations across Japan. The letters stand as a testimony to the tireless work of Jesuit missionaries. There, Sugiyama was identified as a Misericordia Provedo, a chief leader of a confraternity devoted to charity. Beside his name was 75 others, merchant, artisan, noblemen, all continuing their works of mercy for the poor, even under threat of death. It is the most beautiful letter in the world. The community behind the Nagasaki letter. The Nagasaki letter of gratitude tells a similar story. It bears the names of prominent Christians, leaders of Nagasaki Misericordia. They were also town elders, administrator, and caretaker of the city's most needy. The Misericordia ran hospitals. They fed hungry, they sheltered the sick. Even the authority hesitated to shut them down. But on February 11, 1620, the government demolished everything. Hospitals, churches, confraternities, all gone. And yet, in the face of destruction, they wrote, they signed their names, they gave thanks. The letters are not just relics, they are voices, their courage made visible. Echo from the nose. When we think of historical mysteries, our mind often drifts to distant land and ancient script. But sometimes real enigma lies not in the language or parchment, but in the presence of too many copies. Among the treasures of Vatican libraries lies curious puzzle. Two identical letters of gratitude from the Tohoku region. Why two? Why from the same place? And what story was this letter trying to tell twice? Looking at the Vatican manuscript alone offered no answers. In March 2022, a striking discovery came to light. A third copy matching the Tohoku letter in every detail was found in Florence, Italy. This unexpected find invites a fresh look at the letter's journey across time and place. Dr. Carl Brandon Strelka, famous curator in Florence, and Professor Timon Screech in Kyoto were already examining it. I contacted Professor Screech immediately. And just 3 months later, during a research trip to Rome, I extended my journey to Florence. There, in the Dominican library beside Santa Maria Novella, I found the key. A newly discovered letter from Tohoku marked first track, Prima Via. You know, the Jesuits have a practice. They send various copies of vital messages to Roman Jesuit headquarters, each by a different track. One route, Manila to Mexico, to other, Macau and Malacca to Europe via Goa. The Jesuit missionary in Japan usually made 3 copies for this purpose. Matthias Ecola supplied this method to Tohoku letter of gratitude. The Vatican holds the second track and third track copies. Only the Tohoku letters bear these track labels, which means only in the case of Tohoku, there were originally 3 identical letters. Matthias Ecolos likely sent the first track letter alongside for others from different regions, 5 in total. The remaining 2 Tohoku copies arrived in Rome later, each by its own track. But the Florentine manuscript, that is the first track copies, raises new questions. Where has it been all this time? And why was it removed from the original set? The answer lies in the content. Unlike other records, the Tohoku Letter of Gratitude includes personal names, specific phrases, and bold statements. Due to the letter's rich detail, its creator chose to write the Japanese text and the Latin translation on separate sheet. The letter highlights the Jesuit unwavering resolve. They kept working in the region despite persecution. This letter stands as a firm response from the Jesuit, offering a rare view of what really happened. It questioned the story told by Franciscan Luis Sotelo, who claimed that when the persecution started, the Jesuits abandoned their followers in Tohoku. The Franciscan accusation was unfounded, and the Tohoku Letter of Gratitude made it clear. It wasn't an ordinary letter. It was a field report documenting the work of Jesuit priest Girolamo de Angelis, who would later be a martyr. In 1623, a fierce debate erupted within the Holy See. In 1585, Pope Gregory XIII granted the Jesuit exclusive mission rights in Japan, which sparked intense controversy. Father Diego de Criado, Dominican friar and former missionary in Japan, appeared before the Holy See and echoed the Franciscan accusation against the Jesuit. He argued that the Jesuit mission monopoly was blocking other orders and causing confusion. He urged the Holy See to distribute missionary authority more fairly and proposed that the still vacant Tohoku mission field be entrusted to mendicant orders. The Jesuit also shared some responsibility for this controversy. Even as the church faced extinction, territorial dispute took center stage. Priorities clearly. May 1624, everything changed. That month of year, a letter of gratitude from Tohoku region arrived at the Holy See. It was at this very time that the letter was said to have reached Rome, which is why that May, Pope Urban VIII penned a new message of comfort to the believers in Japan, an unmistakable sign. In it, he praised the extraordinary ministry of Father Angelis and other Jesuits, whose work in Tohoku had left a profound mark. The only possible source for the Pope's knowledge was the Tohoku Letter of Gratitude. The Commission of the Holy See made a pivotal decision. They extracted the first tract document from the original set. It probably became evidence in the internal debate. And in the end, the Holy See rejected the proposal to reallocate control. Instead, under the leadership of Florentine Cardinal Merini, they showed a compromise, a diplomatic effort to promote harmony between the Jesuit and the mendicant orders. Whether by accident or design, no one returned to the first tract letter to its intended recipient, the Pope. Criado's supporters, especially the Dominican friars, likely left out the letter to avoid contradicting his message, and so it remains today in the Dominican library. And then why is it in Florence? The connection to Florentine Cardinal Merini is intriguing, but the reason remains unclear. Just a brief aside. Please take a close look at this photo. The organizers of this symposium chose it for front page. That the letter of gratitude from Tohoku discovered in Florence. And how do I know it's that very letter? Because the bottom right corner, where the sender's name should be, is mysteriously missing. Now, you might think it just got damaged over time, but that's not quite the case. Thanks to some somewhat nerdy research involving paper fibers, yes, I spent quite a bit of time staring through microscopes, and there are traces that someone intentionally tore it off. Now it is impossible to track down who did such a thing. That odd little detail, it's unique to Florentine version, and it's keeping historians like me up at night. The whole background of the Tohoku letter of gratitude deserves deeper discussion, a story for another time. Across more than 10,000 kilometers between Vatican and Japan, a faith journeyed where roads could not. In the 17th century, the distance felt infinite, the divide profound, and yes, through the heart of believers, that chasm was crossed. These letters of gratitude are not silent artifacts. They speak. They are voices of courage, of unity, of devotion. And today, 4 centuries later, they shine not as relics of the past, but as living proof that faith bridges oceans. And through silence, through storms, hope never left. Thank you for your listening and for remembering.
One moment. Thank you so much, because this topic is very important for us, also for all events that are following now. But I invite you to do a short synthesis in Japanese of your topic. Okay? Very, very short. 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Okay.
1620年代に日本から送られた、日本の信者が教皇パウロ5世に送った、5つの書簡、法統書といいますけれども、その紹介でした。その中には東北のものが非常にユニークで、何か日本の内情を報告しているような内容になっています。でそれが実は、バチカンで行われて聖座で行われていた大きな論争の、証拠に使われているんじゃないかという話です。ドミニク会の悪口を言いましたけれども、ドミニク会が少しそのカモフラージュをしているようなところもありまして、そういうことも発表いたしました。でもこれはれっきとした日本とバチカンの交流の証であります。以上でございます。
Thank you so much. And now I invite Professor Renzo De Luca, director of the Twin Six Martyrs Museum in Nagasaki. I thanks very much Renzo De Luca, because with Renzo De Luca we have organized also our exhibition in Amakusa, and I thanks Renzo for your collaboration. And the title of your presentation is The History of an Encounter Japanese Christianity. Thank you so much.
Mukode 操作してくれるんですかね。これのパスワードなど分かればね。I cannot open this. Someone can, or are you moving? すみませんね。Okay. So, okay. Just pass it. Okay. Okay. Good. すみません。さっきの 川村神父と、反対といいましょうかね、私に日本人ではないけど日本語で発表することになります。これは文化交流の証明でもあるかと思います。よろしくお願いします。So for the English speakers today, I will speak in Japanese. So sorry, but the slides also have English content, so you will be able to follow me, I hope. So my point is the exchange that was done, the influence that Christianity, そうね、日本語申し訳ない。日本語と、日本とヨーロッパの互いの文化交流ですね。よく迫害などですね、拒否などのことが紹介されますが、やはり互いにすごくいい交流をもたらしたということは、独特な立場といいましょうかですね、別な観点から紹介したいと思います。まずですね、このキリスト教者の人数ですけれども、このぐらいですね、爆発的に増えていたということは事実ですね。ですから、いくら外国の宗教あるいはなんかこのわけのわからない外人たちは広めている宗教だと言われたとしても、証拠としてはアバウトの人数ではあるんですけれども、爆発的に受け入れられたということは間違いないんですね。で、その地元のキリスト教の育ち方ですね、例えばイエス会だけに絞りますとこのぐらいですね、あっという間に日本管区、私たちは宗教、修道会の中で管区と言いますけれども、日本管区の中ではあっという間に日本人が中心になったんですね。半分以上、あるいは半分近く、地元のクリスチャンたちだったと。おそらくこの400年前にはこの数形、他の管区どのミッションのところにもないと思うんですね。地元の人たちがそれを指導しているという内容になると言ってもいいんですね。で、影響力なんですけれども、名前はあえて英語にしてますけれども、例えば豊臣秀吉、つまり最初の段階ですね、ザビエルからそんなにですね、50年まだ経てないうちに、こういうふうにですね、今で言えば秀吉の必勝とかですね、雄筆とかですね、あるいはその小西行長とかですね、大友宗麟とかですね、ああいうような非常に協力のある人たちはクリスチャンになっていたということが、事実ですね。あくまでも一部ですね、細川グラシアとか夫人たちも入れれば、本当に相当な当時の日本を動かせるほどの力があったと。だからこそ当時の指導者たちは恐れていたということですよね。じゃあ日本人たちのこの交流どこまで進んでいたかということですね。外国人の人たちは何人か日本語をちゃんと学びましたけれども、こういうふうにですね、日本人で横文字、ローマ字と、ポルトガル語を書く、これはブラダー・ダミアンですね、秋月のダミアンと呼びますが、この人がこういうふうに手紙を送ってですね、ローマの文書館にまだあるんですね。北の上の方がローマ字ですねを日本語にしているんですね。このご引きなされ揃えばかたじけなく存じ立てますり候と、そういうようなこの縦にするところですね、この最後の挨拶ですね。このような立派な日本語、日本人だから当然といえばそうかもしれませんけれども、この達筆な日本語を書く人はポルトガル語もローマ字も書いているということですね。一例に過ぎないんですが、でこれはですね、私最近ですね、たまたま出会った資料ではあるんですけれども、やはりこの、当時のクラウディオ・アクアビバ総長が当時のスペインの官区長たちに送った手紙ですけれども、これはモヌエンタ・ペルアナですね。ですからペルーについての、資料集に載っているんですけれども、ちょっと驚くほどですね、こういう内容になっているんですね。したがって日本から来たよくて順調を表す報告を受け、 その見事な改心は残りの国民に広がると期待して世界の会員に手紙を送ったとき、許しの奇跡とご聖体を受けて日本人の改心を願うことができるように、教皇から全面的な青年を頼みましたと。ジュビレウムと書いてあるんですけれども、これはイエス会員のためのジュビレウムですね。青年を、ある意味は修道会内の、ローカル版といいましょうかですね。ですから、ここはソーチュアクアビバがあえて、この、世界のイエス会員に書いたときには、日本のことを考えて書きましたと。でこれことあるかなと思った私ですけれども、やはり探してみると、総長たちが書いた召喚書があるんですね、ラテン語ですけれども、こういうふうにですね、1617年に出版されたものですけれども、当然ながらオリジナルは当時の1004年の、ありますけれども、こういうふうにですね、ヨハネ福音書のところを引用してですね、であそこに書いているようにですね、Prefertium veru in Japone insula vastissima, campum latissimum apertit と書いてあるんですね。ですから、世界のイエス会員たちにはこういうふうに堂々と日本のことを考えて、これほどの福音宣教の土地がないと。訳して、このラテン語を訳しておけばこういうふうにですね、キリストの福音は特に日本において実現されました。これは強大な島であり、広大な畑が開かれ、我が会の働きによってキリスト教の名声と神の栄誉が拡大されました。ですから、能力のある会員は神の恵みによって道徳と研究を重ね、そちらに優先的に派遣すべきですというふうに書いているんですね。当然ながらですね、これはペルーの文書館についているんですから、おそらく他の韓国の人たちから見るとあまり面白くない話でしょうね。優先的に日本に送りますと堂々と書いているんですが、そこまで影響、日本に来たことはないアクアビバがそこまで影響されたと。つまり模範的なミッションだというふうに見ていたということですね。この交流の中でさっきダミアンの紹介しましたけれども、天正少年施設ですね、もう何回も話が出ますので省きますけれども、こういうふうにですね、外国でも大事にされている手紙ですね。で逆に例えば伊藤満書が当時の教皇に送った手紙ですね、きれいなスペイン語で書かれているんですね。非常に格調の高い、もちろん本人は書いたというよりは、本人はいろいろ直してもらったものを自分の手でサインしているということもあるけども、彼の手紙ではあるんですね。日本の中の、京都の、文化ですねの中にもやはりこういうような南蛮寺ですね、宣教師たちは立ってて長くは持たなかったんですけれども、こういうのは屏風というか扇子の中にも載っているぐらい、やはり、価値のあるものとしてテーマになっているということですね。またその屏風の中ではこういうふうに宣教師たちと、このブラザー・ロレンソと思われる、修道士ですね、一緒に歩いているロザリオを持っていると、その文化ですね、ロザリオを売っている女の子とかですね。またこの場面ですね、この描いている人はほとんどわからないかもしれませんけども、こういう光景ですね。バティカン公会議以前のミサはそのまま日本で行われていたという、400年前のものだと思えないぐらいですね。でももちろんこのザビエルの絵ですね、これはもうどの日本人でも知っているぐらいですから、その影響がですね、今に至って広がっています。この和紙で描かれている聖母マリアですね、これはジョバンニ・ニコラオというイタリアのブラザーで、またその、有名な美術家でもあるんです。彼は日本で、特に長崎で教えていたんですけども、こういうふうにですね、傷んではいるんですけれども、非常にきれいなタッチのマリア様が、日本化したイタリアのマリア様と言ってもいいかもしれませんですね。その文化交流が見事に美術にも現れています。 でもちろん文化交流の中ではその迫害ということは欠かせないんですけど、ルイス・フロイスが書いた記録の中ではこういうスケッチですね。十字架、日本人の十字架がイエスの十字架と違ってですね、十字架に乗っているとまた下にも上にも縛られてですね、つまり釘では打ってない、釘打って死なせるということではなく、槍で殺されると。つまりフロイスはその意味では当時の誤解されやすいところをきちんと書いておきました。さっきコンフラリアの話もありましたけれども、やはり当時の日本人たちが、この場合は総長ですね、イエス会の総長ですけれども、こういうこの慈悲の役ですね、コンフラリアを立ち上げたいから、教皇から免書ですね、インドルセンシアをいただくように頼んでいるんですね。もう堂々と、これは教会のどの国に負けないと言いましょうかですね、同じレベルで活動しているんですね。これはもう信徒中心の活動ですね。このイエス会にとっては霊書という本が非常に大事ですね。ロレオラの聖イナシオが書いた祈りの本ですけれども、この日本語訳もありますね。1607年に出版されてですね、ロマン字ではあるんですけれども、こういうふうにですね、普通考えればそこまでね出版するほどはないだろうというような、つまりもう神父たち主導士しか使わない本だと思われた非常に人気がありました。これを見るとですね、訳していないんですね。もう解釈しているということですね。この2行、2箇所をちょっと紹介してますけれども、やはり鏡のようにですね、祈りが鏡のように、鏡を見て初めてだとは自分の顔を見るように、祈りをすれば初めて霊的なこと、神様のことは見えてくると。これは元の霊書に載ってないんですね。これはおそらく霊書をした日本人がこれが役立つんだということを解釈して載せているんですね。下の方もそうですけども、祈りがやはりこういう薪を添えてですね、火が消えないように少しずつですね、それと同じように毎日の祈りですね、見事なロヨラの聖イナシオはそこまで書いていないんですけども、彼らが当時のブラザーたち、日本人たちはこれを入れてですね、豊富、より豊かにしてるんですね。でこの迫害になるとまたですね、福音宣教のやり方が変わりましたですね。ですからその適用能力といいましょうかですね。でこの2つがこういう迫害される人たちへの勧め、あるいは心の準備を堂々とさせているんですね。その迫害を受けてあと殉教者になるですね、187の一人ですけれども、中浦ジュリアンですね、ペトロ・キーベと同じグループですけれども、彼が書き残した手紙ですね、これはうちの記念館の実物はありますけれども、こういうふうにですね、堂々とポルトガル語で書いているんですね。英語の内容はこういうふうになっていますけれども、日本語で言えばその、迫害の中では非常に神父が足りない中でこの、口の巣から書いているんですから、島原半島の人たちはちゃんと神父が回れるように、また捕まえられないように一生懸命に働いていて、でみんな非常に熱心だということですね。高く自分の、教会の人々を高く評価してローマに送ったおかげで、この手紙は今でもですね残っています。当時の、このインクルトゥレーションといいましょうかですね、この貝殻を掘ってですね、こういう昔あっただろうとブロンズのメダルをコピーして自分たちで作っているんですね。これは天草の方に、あったものです。おそらく戦国にはこのようなものがあったんですね。工夫して自分たちで、こういういろんなものを持っていると。その隠れの中ですね、隠れ潜伏している中で一つの名人ですね、金スーバ辞表へですね、トーマス・デ・サン・アグスティンですね、188の一人ですね、今の教皇と同じようにアグスティンの会のメンバーですけれども、彼がですね、奉行所で雇ってもらったんですね。 ですからもう本当に完全なスパイですね。昼間は奉行の手伝いをしている。夜になると牢屋に入っていた仲間たちの国会とか許し、そのご生態ができるときはするとかですね。だから本当に二重生活を送りながら完全なスパイ活動をしていたと。途中でバレてですね、捕まえられて殉居するんですけれども、そこ発想ですね。神父が迫害者であった奉行所で雇ってもらうんだという、それは誰も考えないような選挙方法ですね。もう見事ですね。その時代が過ぎるとこういう考察ですね。キリスト教は禁じられているから内容ですね。結局バテレンの証人が銀500ですね。もう莫大なお金ですね。億近いと言ってる人もいるんですけども、そこもいかなくても本当に大金です。でバテレン・イルマン立ち返りですね。つまり一旦拒否してキリスト教をやめてもう一度戻る人にも銀300ですね。非常に手強い相手だと平たく言えばですね。であとはカテキストですね。同塾ですね。100という莫大なお金をかけていたとですね。つまり役人たちもこのぐらいのことが教会の価値、教会のランクですね。カトリック教会どういう組織になっているかということを分かった上でやっているんですね。立ち返り者が戻ったら非常に励ましになるのは分かった上でお金をかけているんですね。もう一つはその迫害の時にはこの踏み絵ですね。絵を踏むことによって自分はキリスチャンではないというような、だから拒否ですね。ですからキリスチャンたちにとってこれをしながら自分の心でごめんなさいと思いながらですね、本当に精神的なこの冒涜というかですね、あるいは迫害というかですね、拷問と言ってもいいと思うんですね。で彼らはどうやってくり抜いたかといえば、結局神父がいなくても自分の心の中で悔い改めれば神様が許してくださるんだと。神父は戻ればその時告解すればいいという教えですね。なかなか普通の教会の中ではそういうことは堂々と教えられないんですけれども、この状況に合わせてこれは通用した。これは何百年もキリスト教の信仰を守り続けたと。でこの島原の乱ですねの時もそうですけれども、これは宗教戦争という人もいるんですけれども、今のいろんな研究の中ではそれよりは圧迫された国民たちの束ねたこの一致する力がキリスト教ということだったと言われるんですね。でこの島原の乱が終わってですね、何万人もキリスチャンたちは殺されて、で当然ながらその幕府側も何万人も亡くなったに違いないんですけれども、最後にですねこういうふうにですね、子供もわらべも女もですね、つまり戦えない人たちでさえも喜んで死を受け入れるということですね。迫害者というかその戦争を終わらせる人としてはもったいない話だということですね。だけどもそれが印象に残って、結果としては迫害者側の証言、この人たちは立派な信仰を持っていた、死を受け取っただから殉教者だったということも言えるかもしれません。そこまで深入りしないんですけれども、そういうような記録が残っているんですね。でまたこの野草天中記とですね、もともとは天罰ですね、この野草キリスチャンたちに下ったという内容のプロパガンダなんですけれども、そのプロパガンダ、つまりキリスチャンたちはどれほど悪くてどれほど迫害することは正しかったと言わんばかりの本の中にはこういうふうにですね、しかりで100年余り宗門流布の地になれば容易に大天には及ばさりきなりということを書いてあるんですね。つまり迫害者あるいはプロパガンダを作った人でさえも結局そう簡単には100年以上キリスト教に根付いたものですから、宗教ですから、そう簡単には消えないんだということですね。もう認めてるんですね。潜伏がキリスチャンの時にワクワクされてこういうふうにですねバレたら大変だということで、このまま埋まったまま残っているんですね。またいろいろなものと同じようにですね、元の外国から持ってこられたものが今の潜伏キリスチャンたち、隠れキリスチャンたちにとっては聖なるものだと いうふうになっています。で最後にこういうマリア観音ですね、つまり観音像をマリア様に見立ててですね、祈りをしていると。これは言うのは簡単ですけれども、本当は心の中で自分が霊的なものが中心であって、その目の前にある物質的なものは本物ではないという、この心の中の切り替えができてなかったらですね、これを信仰は使えなかったということですね。いろいろなパターンのマリア様ですね。でこういうふうに半分溶けているですね、この被爆のマリア観音というですね、深堀家が持っていたものですけれども、皮肉的には持ち主はみんな一発で亡くなったんですけれども、この観音がその信仰を今でも静かですね、この人たちはクリスチャンだったと語ってくれているんですね。もう一つですね、これは最後になりますけれども、マイトレイヤですね、弥勒菩薩を使ってキリストに祈っていたんですね。例えば痩せているのは40日間は断食したから痩せていますということですね。つまり読み直してるんですね。仏教の仏祖でありながら、自分の心が正しければ仏祖の前でもキリストに祈れるという、言うのは簡単ですけれども、私たちになかなかできないことを彼らが本当の宗教とは何か見出したと言っても、ちょっと乱暴なまとめ方かもしれませんが、そういうことを表しているんですね。ですから駆け足ではあるんですけれども、どれほど迫害者も迫害を受ける人も交流して、でそれにもめげない、譲っていいものと譲ってはいけないものを彼らが見事にそれを見つけて伝えていたんですから、現代の例えばメディアに隠れているキリスト教とか、メディアに隠れている若者の不安などですね、私たちはやはりこの人たちに学んで見つけていかない、開発していかないといけないかなというふうに考えてですね、この発表を終わりたいと思います。どうもご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much. And now I invite Professor Anthony Ucheler from United States, Boston College, Director of Ricci Institute for Chinese Western Culture History, because also his topics follows this introduced by Professor De Luca. Thank you so much.
No one is perfect. So, prima di dare inizio alla conferenza odierna, desidero innanzitutto esprimere la mia più profonda gratitudine a tutti gli amici dell'Arcidiocesi di Lucca, in particolare alla professoressa Olimpia Niglio. Vorrei inoltre estendere i miei più sentiti ringraziamenti agli illustri ospiti provenienti dalla Santa Sede, al cardinale Hollerich, mio compagno di 40 anni, al signore ambasciatore Vattani, ai membri della Conferenza Episcopale del Giappone e a tutti i partecipanti al simposio di oggi. と同時に、この後の発表を英語で続けさせていただきますことにつきまして、皆様のご理解に心より感謝申し上げます。本日は国際博覧会の場でございますので、私のささやかな所見を日本語やイタリア語を話されない方々にもご理解できますよう述べさせていただければと存じます。So we've been talking about the arrival and the subsequent growth of Christianity in Japan. ちゃんと字幕をつけました。So, here we are at World Expo and at the Vatican Pavilion. As a historian, I believe one of the purposes of such a World Expo is to highlight both commonalities and differences between cultures and peoples over time. Thus, it is natural that we explore points of contact and also mutual interactions. So the difficult and provocative question I would like to pose today as the focus of this talk is the following. Is Christianity simply a foreign religion that has been transported from abroad, maybe not necessarily only from Lucca, or did it in fact become and is now a Japanese religion? And if so, in what sense is it truly a Japanese religion? Before answering that question, we must note that today Christianity is almost invariably identified with the West, inextricably linked to Rome, the eternal city, the Urbs Aeterna. But we must remember that Christianity was not originally a Western religion. Athens and Rome worshipped multiple gods until the time of the Emperor Constantine. Only then did it become the official religion of the Roman Empire. Before then, persecution was almost universal, and Christianos ad leones, or Christians to the lions, was a common phrase, a gruesome fate that awaited them in the Colosseum, whilst others were burnt alive as human torches. So what about Japan? Just as Christianity came to Rome and Athens from Judea, so too it arrived in Japan and also in China as a foreign faith. But was it always destined to be only foreign? The Chronicles of Japan, the Nihon Shoki, composed in 720, tell us that when Buddhism was first introduced into Japan in the 16th century by Korean envoys, strong objections were raised at the Yamato court by the powerful Nakatomi and Mononobe clans who were associated with the native Shinto shrines. One particular phrase is noteworthy. Please take a look at this. These two clans warned the emperor not to turn his back on the myriad number, the Yao Yorozu, of native gods, Kuni no Kami, by worshipping foreign gods, Atashi no Kami. Against such objections, the imperial Prince Shotoku, in his 17-article constitution, gave Buddhism a central place by calling for reverence of the three treasures, the Sampo, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Yet the process by which Buddhism would be transformed into a truly Japanese religion would still take many centuries. When Xavier arrived in this country in 1549, he was confronted with this complex and multi-layered religious tradition with its long history. He soon became aware of the great Tendai esoteric school, the Mikkyo, of learning and training at Hiezan in Kyoto. Just as he had done with scholars at the University of Paris, he wished to engage in religious debate with the monks at Enryakuji, but it did not come to pass. A key figure of the second generation of missionaries is the great Italian Alessandro Valignano, a Jesuit and a nobleman who was put in charge of all the Jesuits of the East Indies in 1573. After an arduous journey, he finally reached the shores of Japan aboard a Portuguese ship in 1579 and disembarked on the south end of the Shimabara Peninsula in the port city of Kuchinotsu. His arrival is still commemorated there. Within a year, he drafted guidelines for the mission. After a series of consultations, he writes the following to Rome about what he concluded.
This is the only remedy for the conversion and conservation of the Japanese mission. There is no other way to sustain the mission without this means of education.
The establishment of schools required benefactors, and the first two major supporters of this new enterprise were the short-lived King Sebastian of Portugal and Pope Gregory XIII, a key supporter of Jesuit missions and schools around the world. In 1580, the Jesuits were able to establish a college of higher learning in philosophy, theology, and astronomy in the city of Funai, in the kingdom of Bungo, present-day Oita. This was possible thanks to the patronage of a powerful and wealthy Japanese daimyo. In this case, it was Otomo Sorin, or Otomo Yoshishige, who gave them the necessary land and guaranteed their protection. Now, back in Rome, the story of the College of Funai centers on a curious manuscript in the Vatican Library. Everyone is talking about the Vatican Library today, so I have to talk about the Vatican Library too. In 1949, a copy of a compendium of theology, philosophy, and astronomy for use in Japan was discovered by Josef Franz Schutte, a famous German Jesuit scholar. It was compiled in 1593 to be used as a textbook at the college in Funai. It was written wholly in Latin, and its title reads, The Compendium Catholicae Veritatis. It was composed by the Spanish Jesuit Pedro Gomez, who had taught at the University of Coimbra. But where was the Japanese translation of this compendium? 400 years after it was first translated into Japanese in 1594-1595, I was able to identify a copy of this rare treasure in 1995 at Magdalen College at the University of Oxford. That's where it was hiding. It was compiled by Japanese and European Jesuits working together as they realized that the Latin version was not sufficient for the purposes of faith education in Japan. Now, let's look at the original manuscript in Japanese, and the Japanese title is
実域のいる満州に対して第一公覧の師範日本のヴィセプロヴィンシアルバテレン・ペーロ・ゴメス編み立てたもカトリケ・ベリタティスのコンペンディオをバテレン・ペーロ・ラモン実域の言葉に翻訳し終わる。
Now, the English translation is
The Compendium of Catholic Faith, compiled by Father Pedro Gomez, Vice Provincial of Japan, and wise and learned master of the group of brothers of the Japanese region, translated in full into the language of the Japanese region by Father Pedro Ramon.
A few years later, Valignano writes to Europe about this compendium, and he says the following.
Father Vice Provincial Gomez also composed a good compendium or summary of the main questions regarding the potential and immortality of the soul and other theological matters. His exposition is positive rather than scholastic. It was composed both in Latin and Japanese and is read to the brothers before they engage in preaching.
Valignano then makes a crucial point regarding how he intends to deal with the teaching of moral precepts to the Japanese.
They will understand in Rome that putting pressure on us to promulgate positive precepts, that is, specific rules for the Japanese, could result in harm and irreparable damage, as the latter would be unable to comprehend and therefore accept or live by such rules. For Japan is not yet able to follow all the laws and prohibitions until this church has become more widespread.
Valignano further notes the need to apply the ancient principle in moral theology of epikeia, or equity, equità in Italian, moral discernment and discretion to the concrete problems faced by the Japanese Christians in Warring States Japan. What follows is an excerpt of Japanese festivals, very short, that I translated from Gomez's compendium written in the Japanese literary style, the bungotai of the time. Therein he offers us a glimpse of some of the very practical moral questions that Japanese Christians had put to him. The casuistry, or moral case studies reflected in this text, are, I believe, unique, precisely because they allow us to hear the forgotten echoes of the voices of early Christians from this period. They undoubtedly confronted the missionaries with concrete questions about how to live out their Christian faith during the turbulent Warring States period in which they lived, a time marked by violence, war, and religious persecution. These cases are found in chapter 73. Whether it is permissible under the command of one's lord, for example, a samurai lord, a ryoshu, or a daimyo, to perform acts that resemble idolatry. And here is the original title of that in Latin and also in Japanese and then in modern Japanese, as you can see here.
Is one committing a sin by placing an arrangement of decorative pine branches at one's gate on New Year's Day? If this is done simply as part of the festivities and does not lead to superstition or endanger one's faith, it is not a sin. For example, wearing festive clothing, dancing, and the placing of decorative pine branches outside one's home are not sinful acts. What about at the time of the Bon festival in July? To perform dances is not a sin. To light lanterns and to offer sake in the belief that the spirits will return is futile. If your Lord tells you to light a lantern, do it while pretending you do not know the reason for it. However, it is both necessary and important to help pagans understand that the immortal souls of the deceased do not return, nor are they affected by such lavish feasts in their honor. Thus, when you light a lantern, you do it simply out of respect for the order received from your Lord, and not because you believe that it is of any use to the deceased. How about the Gion festival? If you are ordered by your Lord to take part in the general merriment of the festival, including performing dances, you may do so, for it is not a sin. However, to dance in front of the images of the gods, to carry the mikoshi with the image of the divinity, or to perform similar acts is very close to idolatry and therefore inappropriate. Such situations gave Christians of the primitive church a very good reason to adopt pagan feasts and to turn them into celebrations of their own blessed. In fact, the saints and doctors of the church instructed Christians to do so. The feast of St. Peter's Chains is one such example.
Gomez knew well that Christians celebrated the feast on August 1st to replace the glorification of Octavian, Julius Caesar's grandnephew, who became Emperor of Rome and was hailed as Augustus, and in whose honor the Roman Senate named the month of August. What Gomez's casuistry reveals is that he believed that the task for the missionaries was to discern the seeds of the word already sown in Japanese culture and in the Japanese moral sense. This was a remarkable reflection before its time of the words of the Second Vatican Council's teaching ad gentes on the presence of such seeds in other cultures. Thus, both orthodoxy, the faith one professed, and orthopraxis were, I would say, reinvented and redefined. However, kiyotsukemashou, we must not forget that inventio in classical Latin and classical Latin rhetoric does not mean invention, but discovery, finding new words with which to be persuasive. To elucidate this metaphor, let's imagine historical Christianity with its millennia of religious, cultural, social, and political history as being similar to a fully grown baobab tree, which is, however, a tree native to Madagascar, mainland Africa, and Australia. Now, what if we were to transport and transplant this tree here to Umeshima in Osaka Bay? Would this even be possible? Would the tree survive, or would it simply die? And would it cause damage to local fauna and flora? Thus, the question for the missionaries then was, if not transplanted, Christianity, could it take root in Japan and grow? And if so, under what circumstances could that happen? The first time this became a point of contention was at the First Council of the Apostles in Jerusalem around the year 48 AD. The question before them was, to what degree, if any, newly converted Gentiles had to adhere to the Mosaic law? That is, was it necessary to become a Jew in order to be a Christian or not? St. James, the head of the Jerusalem community, having listened to Peter and Paul, proposed a solution to this dilemma. And he said in Acts 19, the council decided that what they needed to do was simply to tell them to abstain from food polluted by idols, from sexual immorality, from meats of strangled animals, and from blood. And these are the only rules they had to obey. Otherwise, they did not have to follow the more than 600 rules of the Jewish law or culturally become Jews. Thus, Christianity, from this pagan Christianity, was able legitimately to put down roots in Greece and Rome and to adapt to those cultures. So how does Gomez apply these principles and Valdignano's guidelines in his theological compendium to the context of Warring States Japan? To sum up, we see that he concentrates his entire discussion around several key points. The first is moral intentionality. The specific words he repeatedly used in Japanese is kokoroate and kokoroe. The chief purpose and key principle in this moral scheme is thus relational. It is aimed to avoiding scandal, and both to Christians and non-Christians alike. And here scandal has a very specific meaning. It means engaging in an action that would somehow hurt the faith of Christians or create confusion among non-Christians. Thus, orthopraxis, or proper behavior, was of paramount importance in a non-Christian setting. And orthodoxy was not viewed as some abstract theological debate that was separated from or independent of concrete practices of the faith. And when discerning between difficult or controversial options, as mentioned earlier, epikeia was deemed more important than any application of absolute and abstract principles without due consideration given to the proper context. Now, in this entire discussion, the question Gomez and other missionaries had posed was, could there be a new primitive church as in times of Greece and in Rome, in Japan, and in China? This was the question that they were asking. In answer to this key query, Gomez set forth his own guidelines, theological and moral, adapted to the Japanese situation in order to establish a Christian community in Japan. This was to be in accordance with the principles of St. Paul, who firmly argued against Gentile converts needing to become cultural Jews in order to be Christians. Christian. It is my contention and belief that these adaptations made it possible for Japanese Christians both to comprehend and take to heart their faith in such a way that when the persecutions began and there were no more priests left to support them or to tell them what to do, they were able to continue preserving Christianity. The prayer of contrition, or the Konchiri-san, is a remarkable example of how Japanese Christians internalized the teachings they had received and then transmitted them for centuries. And in order not to break while being battered by the winds of persecution, as the famous Japanese saying goes, like bamboo, the Japanese community had to learn to bend. So as I conclude, we return to the question I asked at the beginning. Is Christianity a foreign faith, or has it earned its place after almost 500 years as a genuinely Japanese faith? Both the large number of martyrs we have been talking about, from powerful daimyo like Takayama Ukon, Hosokawa Gracia, and nobles, as well as the survival of underground Christians, or the martyrdoms also of ordinary people for over 259 years of persecution, bears eloquent witness to how strongly the seeds of faith had in fact taken root. Thus, the witness and perseverance of Japanese Christians provides the answer to our question. Now let's return to Kyoto at Shunko-in, a sub-temple of the Myoshinji monastery complex. There we find a bell cast in 1577 for the Nambandera of Miyako, which survives. Even now, its toll continues to carry the lingering echoes of Christian faith in the ancient capital. Miyako de no Kiristan no Shinko no yoin o tsutaeteiru. ご清聴ありがとうございます。
Thank you so much for this nice, interesting presentation. And now we continue, and we concluded this first part of our international symposium this morning with an interesting relation, because this relation introduced the history of a Jesuit company here in Kansai region. And I invite Professor Kisaki from the University of Tokyo and Dr. Hakune from the Oriental Library of Tokyo. Thank you so much. With a presentation, the titled Tracing the Jesuit Missionaries' Route from the Kyoto-Osaka region, an historical overview of his origin and expansion. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Kisaki. I also study the history of the Christian. Perhaps the first of the secular world. And I'm from Osaka. This photo shows a monument in front of my late mother, the family home on the left side. The monument marks the junction of the two Koya roads that I will be discussing. The right one is the landscape from Eboshigata near that monument. I'm truly grateful for the opportunity to give this presentation here in Osaka. The title of our presentation is tracing the Jesuit missionary road from the Kyoto-Osaka region. A historical overview of its origin and expansion. In the so-called Christian century, which began with the arrival of Franciscus Xavier in the mid-16th century, the Kinai region, especially Kyoto and Osaka, became one of the most important centers of missionary work in Japan. Xavier's dream of establishing a church in the capital was carried out by his successors, who won over many influential converts across the region. Building on this success, the Jesuit visitor Alessandro Varignano, during his first visitation from 1597 to 1582, described Kyoto and Osaka as the most promising and strategic area for the mission in Japan, and urged that the society direct as many resources there as possible. In this joint presentation, we will take a fresh look at this region from two perspectives: Jesuit missionary networks and geographical networks. The first part deals with the late Sengoku and Azuchi Momoyama periods, up to the impact of the Expulsion Edict of 1587. The second part turns to the years after 1614, when Christianity was forbidden nationwide, and traces how underground communities of missionaries and Christians spread outward from the Kyoto-Osaka area. In 1559, 8 years after Xavier's entry into Kyoto, the Jesuit mission there was launched by Gaspar Villela together with the Japanese Irman Lorenzo. Their first efforts brought about 100 converts. From Kyoto, they carried out itinerant preaching across the Kinai region. Then, under the control of the influential Miyoshi clan center, and their efforts led to the acceptance of Christianity by merchants, intellectuals, military commanders, and other local elites. Some of the most notable converts in the early 1560s included in Nara Yuki Tadamasa, Enrique, Takayama Dario, and his son Takayama Ukon Justo, together with about 150 Christians. In the Imori Castle area of Kawachi, in today's eastern Osaka, Sanga Yoriteru Sancho, Yuki Yaheiji George, Miki Handayu, the father of famous Paolo Miki, later one of the 26 martyrs. Shobayashi Cosme, and about 70 Christians. Among the verses of Miyoshi clan, group conversions were encouraged by Yuki Tadamasa's son, Yuki Anton. As a result, churches were established in Kawachi along the Higashi Koya Road, at Okayama, Sanga, Wakae, Yao, and Eboshigata. While in Sakai, the house of Hibiya Ryoke Diogo served as a church. As you can see on this map, Sakai and Eboshigata were connected by the Nishikoya Road. The Eboshigata was under the rule of Ichichi Bandayu, Paulo. The itinerant mission across the Kinai region was carried out frequently by Gaspar Villela. Later, in 1573, when Takayama Dario and Just took possession of Takatsuki on the north bank of the Yodo River, they built a church within the castle grounds. In contrast to the steady progress in Kawachi, the missionary activities in Kyoto was hindered by the political situation and the impact of war. After the Eiroku incident in 1565, the imperial court issued an edict prohibiting Christianity, forcing the missionary to withdraw to the area around Imori Castle. 4 years later, however, conditions became more favorable. When Oda Nobunaga entered Kyoto in 1569, the missionaries were able to return to the capital. By 1577, thanks to the efforts of the Takayama and Yuki families and other local Christians, a three-story church was completed in Ubayama-gicho in the city center. The church was dedicated to the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, and she was chosen as its patroness. Significantly, her feast day coincided with the day of Francisco Xavier's arrival in Japan. From this turning point, missionary work in the Kyoto-Osaka area flourished, and it is reported that more than 7,000 people converted in the same year. By 1581, when Alessandro Varignano visited the Kyoto-Osaka region, the number of Christians had grown to about 25,000. In particular, Takatsuki, ruled by Takayama Ukon, counted between 16,000 and 18,000 Christians. At this time, Varignano reported to the Superior Gospel General of the Society of Jesus in Rome, Claudio Acquaviva, as follows, emphasizing the paramount importance of this region for the Jesuit enterprise in Japan. One of Ukon's most notable contributions came in 1583, when he advised Organtino and shouldered the cost of transferring the Jesuit church from Okayama in Kawachi to the castle town of Osaka. This is one scene from director Teshigawara film Rikyu. It depicts Ukon and Jesuits meeting Hideyoshi. After the death of Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, based in Osaka, began to extend his power over the region. For the Jesuits, this was a flourishing period of their mission. However, unfortunately for the missionaries and the Christians, this prosperous situation changed drastically in 1587, when Toyotomi Hideyoshi suddenly issued the edict expelling the missionaries. The Jesuits lost their churches across the region. The leading Christians mentioned earlier perceived this as an unprecedented crisis. They wrote to the Superior General Acquaviva expressing their fidelity and steadfastness in their faith, as well as their hope for the further growth of the church and the spread of Christianity. Looking closely at the signatures on this letter, we can find the names of the prominent Christians already introduced: Shobayashi Cosme, Ichichi, Bandayu Paulo, Sanga Yoriteru Sancho, and Hibiya Ryoke Diogo. The absence of Justo Ukon's signature is explained by the fact that he was then in hiding on Shodoshima. As Hideyoshi's power expanded, the Jesuit seminary was also relocated, first from Azuchi to Takatsuki, then to Osaka, and after the Edict of Expulsion, finally to Arima in Kyushu. The image shown on this screen here is a list of the Arima Seminary students in 1588. Among the names, we can identify 11 students from Kawachi, including Sanga Antonio, the grandson of Sanga Yoriteru Sancho, and Ichiji Mansho, the son of Ijichi Bandayu Paulo. As is evident from this, the Christian faith was passed down to the children and grandchildren of the early leading converts. Broadening our chronological perspective to the years of persecution, we can trace the later fate of Sangha family. As depicted in this image, Sangha Antonio, the one in the seaside, first from the left, this one is Sangha Antonio, and in the sixth from the left is famous Angelo Orsucci. As depicted in this image, Sangha Antonio was executed in September 1622 at the Great Martyrdom in Nagasaki. In 1633, after this expulsion from Japan, a nobleman named Sangha Luis was living in Macau, where he was recorded as a witness to this great martyrdom. Moreover, from the 1660s onward, a Jesuit named Sangha Ignacio was engaged in the missions in Shamu and Cambodia under the jurisdiction of the Japan province. As a result, the close spiritual and organizational relationships between the Kawachi Christians and the Society of Jesus endured over the long term and extended even beyond the shores of Japan. In the second part of this presentation, we will follow the spread of the Jesuit underground network after the onset of nationwide persecution. This is afternoon.
Hello everyone, I'm Susuma Kune. I'm from Oita, which was introduced in the last presentation by Professor Antonio Userev. I'm truly delighted to take part in this symposium. I'd like to express my gratitude to Professor Olimpianillo and all the staff involved in organizing and preparing this symposium. I belong to this library, Toyo Bunko in Tokyo. Last year, I had an opportunity to contribute to this exhibition regarding this, the similar topic of this symposium. And now, following Mr. Kisaki's presentation, I will speak about the Jesuit networks after the commencement of the nationwide persecution of 1614. I'd be very glad if my presentation could offer you some new discoveries and insights about this topic. By 1614, the Jesuit mission in Japan was organized into 5 dialects, reiterados in Portuguese: Nagasaki, Arima, Hakata, Bungo, and Miyako. Among these, the Miyako district covered not only Kyoto, but also Fushimi, Osaka, Sakai, Suruga, the Hokuriku region, and Hiroshima as well. On this map shown on the screen, which was produced in the mid-17th century, we can identify 3 quarters called Deus Machi, meaning Deus Machi. The first one is Deus Zushi, meaning Deus Are, seen north of Horikawa Ichijo of the central city of Kyoto. It was used for the Jesuit church in Kamigyo, Kyoto. The other 2 churches were also built in Kyoto, central Kyoto. The first one is the Franciscan Church, which was destroyed in 1612. And the other one was the Jesuit church in Shimogyo of the Keijo period, which was also destroyed after the 1614 expulsion edict. In 1614, the Tokugawa shogunate launched the nationwide persecution of Christianity and ordered the expulsion of missionaries, which drastically destroyed the established Jesuit missionary system in Japan. Before the expulsion edict, more than 100 Jesuits had been active, but afterwards their number declined dramatically to only 27, including 80 padres and 9 irmãos. The original 5 districts were reduced to 3, Nagasaki, Arima, and Kyoto. After the destruction of missionary stations such as Shimogyo Church in Kyoto, the missionaries were forced to continue their underground activities. And despite being driven into this desperate situation under nationwide persecution, the Kyoto district continued to carry out wide-ranging activities. Under the direction of its superiors, the underground mission extended geographically from the whole part of the Kinai region to the Tohoku in the northeast of Japan, and westward from the Kinai region in the Chugoku and Shikoku region as well. In 1620s, at the time the Japanese Jesuit priest Yuki Diogo was based in Kyoto. He was also responsible for pastoral visits to Fushimi, Setsu, Omi, Tamba, Mino, Owari, and Hokuriku region. And this Japanese Jesuit Diogo Yuki had first entered the seminary in Osaka, and then was ordained the Jesuit priest in Manila in 1615, and then secretly entered Japan. In the Tohoku region, called Oshu, the mission was carried out by Girolamo de Angelis and by the Portuguese Jesuit Diogo Carvalho, who had recently returned from Cochin, China in central Vietnam. We also have a testimonial document on these activities left by the Christians of Kyoto and Osaka, which preserved now in Alcalá de Henares in Spain. This document bears the signatures of 75 representatives of the Kyoto community who gave detailed accounts of the efforts made by the Jesuits in their underground mission. For example, the Article 2 states that the Jesuits resided in Kyoto, Osaka, Sakai, and Oshu, and from the bases they traveled to many places serving as spiritual support for the Christian communities. Article 3 further shows that their missionary journeys extended to 21 regions, including Yamashiro, Setsu, Kii, Izumi of Kinai region, also Harima, Bizen, Mimasaka, Sanuki, Awa, Tamba of Chugoku and Shikoku regions. Furthermore, Omi, Mino, Owari, Iga, Ise of Tokai Chiho, and finally Edo and Oshu. Articles 6 and 8 provide testimony concerning the Tsugaru area at the northern tip of Honshu land. The Jesuits visited and ministered to the Christians there. Tsugaru of Aomori Prefecture held particular significance as a mission field, since it was a place of exile for Christians who had been banished from Kyoto, Osaka, and the Hokuriku region in 1614. This document is historically valuable not only for reporting missionary activities, but also because it shows that many craftsmen belonged to the Christian community of Kyoto. Their professions included making mechanical clocks, mechanical clocks and lacquer work, painting, and maquille decoration. The leading signature of this testimonial document was Sugiyama Teishin, who was mentioned in Professor Kawamura Shinzo Sensei's presentation. He was a chief leader, a professor of the Misericordia in Kyoto. He also signed a letter of gratitude to the Pope in 1621. This fact shows that he had survived the great martyrdom of Kyoto 2 years earlier in 1619. Now, if you are interested in these topics, please consult my publication co-authored with Professor Gonoi Takashi. According to Francisco Pacheco, who had held the position of superior of the Kyoto district at the time, the Christians rejoiced greatly when they received a letter of encouragement from the Pope in Rome. They made copies and sent their letters of thanks back to the Pope by 4 communication routes, quattro vias. In Osaka, Francisco Pacheco was succeeded by Cristobal Ferreira. This is very famous that Ferreira was later arrested and forced to renounce the faith, becoming so-called Corpi Bateren, apostate father. And he is a central figure of Endo Shusaku's Silence and its film adaptations. However, in reality, around 1624, Ferreira was in hiding at the residence of Tome, Japanese Christian Tome, a Christian physician living in near Osaka. There he continued to offer spiritual support to the persecuted Christians in Osaka. He is also known to have taken refuge in the house of Yamamoto Hikotayu Paulo, who served as a kazeiro, a host, and he was the most eminent supporter for the Jesuits. According to this annual report of the Jesuits in Japan for 1632, his house, Yamamoto Hikotayu's house, was always a church of the Society of Jesus, not only in times of peace, but also in the times of persecution. This annual letter also shows us Hikotayu Paulo had already been absent with his family for more than a year, and he moved to a village in the province of Setsu, Osaka. It was called Otowa no Tani, written in these documents. This area was originally under the rule of Takayama Ukon Justo. His religious and political power influence had fostered the growth of a large Christian communities there. It was in this region that 2 renowned Christian arts were discovered in the Taisho period of Japan. The portrait of Saint Francis Xavier and the 15 mysteries of the Virgin Mary. Interestingly, Francisco Pacheco, the provincial of the Japan province, baptized Yamamoto Hikotayu's son, eldest son, 11 years old at the time of his martyrdom. He gave him the name of Ignacio. After this, Cristobal Ferreira also baptized Paulo's second son with the name of Xavier. Needless to say, these commemorative baptismal names were chosen in honor of Ignatius of Loyola and Francis Xavier, who were both canonized in 1622. And I'm going to publish the paper about this topic with the joint study of Mr. Takeyama Shunta. Yamamoto Hikotayu Paulo and his family were executed in Osaka in January 1632. Then Cristobal Ferreira, who was already in Nagasaki at the time, received this news and reported to Rome that execution had intensified the persecution in Oshu, as well as in Kyoto, Fushimi, Osaka, and Sakai. But Ferreira himself became an apostate father in Nagasaki the next year. Almost around the same time, the provincial Mateus de Coros died as a result of illness. In Fushimi, Sebastian Vieira, who had returned from Rome to Japan, was also arrested in Osaka here. With the subsequent arrest of Antonio de Souza, the author of the annual report of 1632, the presence of European Jesuits in the Kina region disappeared. Thereafter, the Japanese Jesuit Yuki Diogo continued the underground mission, but he also was martyred in Osaka in 1636. In this way, the Jesuits from Europe vanished in the Osaka area. In this way, the organized missionary networks of the Jesuits in the Kyoto-Osaka region faced at its final stage. However, the Jesuits in Macau and Manila did not abandon the Japanese enterprise. To conclude this presentation, I'd like to mention briefly as a final attempt for reopening the Japanese mission in the Christian century. In June 1643, under the leadership of the Provincial of Japan, Pedro Marques, 4 Jesuit missionaries set sail from Manila, including Giuseppe Chiara from Sicily Island and the Japanese brother Andrew Vieira from Lisbon. They were joined by 2 Japanese Christians residing in Manila, that is Giulio from Osaka and Jacinto from Kyoto. According to my article published in 2022, this missionary group set their ultimate destination for Tsugaru and Ezo, now Hokkaido. It is, of course, a matter of speculation, but Giulio and Jacinto from Kyoto may have been included in this Marques missionary group in order to minister to their fellow Christians from Osaka and Kyoto who had been banished, exiled to Tsugaru in 1614. As we have seen in the first part of this presentation, after the late Sengoku period, the Kinai region, especially Osaka and Kyoto region, emerged as the principal center of the Jesuit missionary enterprise. The networks formed around missionaries and leading Christians were sustained, supported through geographical networks connections. Their faith was passed down across generations and became deeply rooted in local society. Moreover, this spiritual legacy did not vanish after the expulsion edicts, but survived and extended overseas to Macau and Southeast Asia. As outlined in the later part of this presentation, the Kyoto-Osaka region continued to function as a pivotal principal base for the Jesuit networks across Japan, even under the persecution periods. Missionaries engaged in clandestine activities traveled to Christian communities throughout Honshu, reaching as far as Oshu and Tsugaru. From the letters and the reports, we can recognize the enduring efforts of the Jesuits and Japanese Christians for survival. And along with the spiritual ties with Rome. Finally, it is truly meaningful that we are gathered at the Vatican Pavilion here. We strongly believe that the legacy of the Kyoto-Osaka Christians from centuries ago invites us to reflect on the enduring value of those connections with Rome in our global conversations today. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, and I think it is very interesting to share this also with the Bishop of Kyoto. Thank you so much, and also with the Archbishop of Osaka. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and now finish our first part of the International Symposium. One moment. I invite all bishops to follow me and Dr. Riccardi, and all speakers to follow the volunteers, please. And for all, see you here at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much.